Hello, this is the third talk I'm doing about disaster risk management in Plan, and in this one I'm going to talk about disaster response. Disaster response includes being prepared to respond, immediate relief, and longer-term recovery programming. Plan's policy sets 3 levels for our imperative to respond. The first is if a disaster strikes a program unit. In that case, we must respond. The second is if a disaster strikes in a country where we work, but not necessarily striking a program unit. If this is a nationally significant disaster, then we should respond unless there is a very good reason not to. We will consider if there are unmet needs of children, and if there are, then we should respond. Lastly, if there's a disaster that strikes a country where Plan doesn't work, or a country where there's a national office, we could respond if it's particularly severe, but we wouldn't expect to, and we wouldn't use our core resources to do so. All of our responses should be to international standards that we're signed up to, and assistance should be impartial and given on the basis of need, not just to sponsored children because we have a relationship with them. In a disaster response, speed is everything. Speed is very important, that we make our decisions with whatever information we have available. Sometimes we need to make assumptions to do so. Once we make the decisions, we need to act quickly. And this involves all the team working to support fast action. And a response involves many different components, from the program design and project management, the communication work, the finance, the fundraising, staffing, recruitment, collecting information and organising it, re-establishing ICT, monitoring our work and establishing research, procurement and logistics, and staff security. All of these things need to be happening at the same time, and for that there needs to be an emergency response management team orchestrating the work, but each component must be able to function quickly and effectively. The basic cycle of an emergency response involves the identification of needs, the formulation of a program, the implementation of that program, and then its evaluation. As soon as a disaster strikes, there will be some actions taken. Now, at each level of that cycle, we have a disaster response manual which sets out who should do what. It covers each of the functions, so program, people and culture, programming, communications, etc., and sets out at each of the points of a disaster response the responsibilities for each part of the organisation. We've also got quite a lot of other resources available to us in the organisation. We have an alert system which gets us very clear on what scale of disaster it is, and the situation reports to go with that. We have a tool for assessing the needs, a process for country offices to be prepared. We have training modules on our particular focus areas. We have a fund which can release extra money in a disaster so that money does not have to slow us down. We have a roster of staff who can be sent in to support or even lead emergencies. We have position papers describing our positions on key issues, and we have guidance for quality programming. All of these are available on Planet. Our response to emergencies includes addressing the immediate needs and building on our existing program in a country. However, there are 2 aspects of programming which are particularly important for children, which we will always try and include. One is child protection, and the other is education. So every emergency response should look at the needs of children in those 2 sectors and respond if the needs are not met. But remember, in emergencies we don't need to do everything. there are many other agencies around, and one of our roles is to help to bring in other agencies to places where we know there are needs and allow them to take specialist roles. It's better we do fewer things at larger scale than getting confused with doing many different programme components at once. Most important in emergencies is timely communication. The national offices need to hear what we're doing in order to raise the money that we can spend. We get a lot of profile from this. It's also important to communicate with line managers and with staff and with communities and with governments in the countries where we're working. Security for all staff on the ground is absolutely vital in emergencies. The situation changes, there are often new risks, and this is something that has to be factored in at every stage when things are changing fast. And lastly, team structures and roles often need to change in an emergency to make sure that we have people with the right skills and experience managing a disaster response. Our policy says that every country should be prepared and every emergency programme should have somebody with sufficient experience and training leading it. Others may be involved in support.